Welcome to the Pinkhurst Podcast, a real and whimsical look at what it means to be fully alive with all the joy and chaos and pressure and vulnerability and beauty. Take the ride along with unexpected guests and be inspired to fall in love with your own unique destiny and meaning. You're listening to this because you've decided to abandon the regular route and trust the silence. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best, night and day, to make you everybody else, means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight. Join Astrid and Zach as they follow the cricket.
It's sort of like seeing the human in me doing the thing, making the mistakes or not, or like succeeding or failing or fumbling, and just being like, there's just this observation around just sort of like loving all the parts.
Her masterpiece in blue. At first your lights feel good, warming the dark side of my heart, but quickly I begin to sweat, squirm, pace. There are animals and plants living here that should never be seen. Like blood hitting air, their original blue can never be witnessed by another breathing. And rushing off stage, tripping through the curtains, I stumble into the night, whispering, "To you, I will always be a fraud, a mystery. Only by myself will my theater wolf perform her truth. And until I learn to sit as audience of one, I will never get to witness her masterpiece in blue." This episode is sponsored by Someone Trying to Sell You Shit, a manure company that specializes in a blend of rare elephant feces mixed with mahogany sawdust specifically created for bonsai trees and Venus flytraps. On a serious note, we just released 2 singles for our new project, which we've been creating in the shadows. The new band name is Little Mother. The 2 singles are called New Mom 2 and Angel's Advocate for Jainism. I'm so excited to reveal this alternate universe that we've been conjuring. So check the show notes to find these first 2 singles on Bandcamp, along with some trippy-ass merch, poetry-inspired fashion, and stay tuned for the little rubber devil duck known as Quack. Also, we're going to play one of those at the end of the episode, so stay tuned. All right, our return guest today is Astrid Schmidt, psychotherapist, coach, mother, creator, and all-around scout of the wild frontiers known as Psyche. What's up, my friend?
What's up?
How you doing?
I'm great. It's always so great to connect with you.
Same. Welcome to the hearse. Death is driving. Maybe we're cruising from Brooklyn up to some, I don't know, summer camp where we drop off our inner children to go, play and frolic and be initiated into this trippy-ass adventure of life and death. So this is the first episode I've ever recorded in this temporary spot where we're staying for a few months. My dog Juju may be returning soon. I'm thinking if he barks, I'm thinking like good juju is always good juju, and I'm hoping Juju is good, but if he barks, apparently if you're on ayahuasca and you hear a dog barking, you might lose your mind. So if you hear Juju barking in the back and you lose your mind, blame Kevin.
The ayahuasca trip is peaking. The dogs are barking. We're losing our minds.
That's a disclaimer. So
I love it.
I would say to begin this episode, I have a dear friend named Ruth who sent me a few things that mean a lot to me. She knows how much Tom Robbins means to me, and she sent me an uncorrected proof of his novel Jitterbug Perfume. And then she also knows how I collect quotes and wisdom and, avid reader. So she sent me this envelope full of handwritten post-it notes that she's collected over many, many years. And these are the only copies. So it's pretty special, inheritance and relationship that we have. So I've decided this is the first episode where I reach into the envelope and pull out a quote. And the one that came out today is by Sitting Bull. It does not take many words to tell the truth. And I thought as parents, you and I both always, navigating, juggling our dance of being very present parents, honoring our own work, attempting to stay balanced between the realms, as we spoke about this morning, that quote is perfect for this episode, in this time that we are allotted, you and I right now, to drive in the hearse. We don't need a lot of words to tell the truth. So that's the intention. Much love to Sitting Bull.
Mm.
So yeah, I figured a little check-in if you felt like it. What's going on since I've seen you last? I know we had a nice chat a couple weeks ago about this episode, and in your flow, you said the phrase "let there be crickets" in regards to embracing your own truth regardless of the response of the outer world. And when I heard that, I was like, holy moly, I love that I love that phrase, "let there be crickets." And that's what we're calling this episode. So how are the crickets doing on your side?
Thank you for that. I love that quote. Yeah. I feel good. I feel, I think we had spoken earlier about the season of like, when you're ambitious, then you have dreams and visions and, creative things you want to share, like what it means to have a season, and maybe not just one, but this has been a season for me of like pull back, of kind of like, who are you when you're not getting the fanfare? Who are you when you're not, like, what do you actually believe in? And having to kind of claim that versus like be addicted and codependent with like leaning on outer things, and that feels appropriate. That feels appropriate, like to confront at some point, and why not sooner than later, to be like, oh, there's a thing I can orient around that's not circumstantial around who I am, and my visions and my desires for my life are my sort of God-given right to claim. And in the knowing of that, it comes self-realization and also release around the outer world. What happens on the outer, that's like secondary or a bonus. But so it's been a season of that, kind of like humbling and kind of a little wild and woolly. And so that feels good. I feel like I feel like there's something completing a little bit around that. And I don't know what's next. It just feels like this isn't, this sort of like quiet, being on the inner, like really feeling pretty sequestered and in like hermit mode. I just feel like I've been like in the bottleneck of that. And now I'm like, I don't think this is the end. It's like, so yeah, I feel like a new energy culminating around that and around kind of like having located my power. And that feels great.
That's amazing. Yeah. It sounds like you've grokked. I love the word grok. Molly told me that. So kind of, it means to understand something in your bones, in your body. Mm-hmm. So it's more than a cerebral, conceptual knowledge, but to grok it, you've embodied it, muscle memory. But it sounds like you've grokked that initiation. And I'm sure spiralic healing, of course, it returns in many different layers and seasons. But I too have felt very hermetic and very much in a hibernation, woolly mammoth, ice age, and then finding my own flame in the cave of that. And now, yeah, peeking out a bit and throwing some sparks around and shedding. So we're aligned. So in the name or in honor of our awesome sponsors, Someone Trying to Sell You Shit, which is a fantastic manure company that I highly suggest if you're into bonsai trees and Venus flytraps. I was thinking about shit and prima materia in alchemy, prima materia, first matter, which I guess is the idea of, metaphorically, you're taking something like shit or first matter or something that people might just cast away as stuff we don't want anymore, and then transforming that into gold, again, metaphorically. So in a time where all of this raw, unconscious material or shit or prima materia, is always kind of there under the surface collectively, it's interesting to see how it seems to be being funneled into false crusades, right? Like a lot of people are being manipulated, always have been, but especially now, perhaps. How do you snip those Pinocchio strings, perhaps, to do what you're talking about, really taking stock of your own energies and then pointing them and harnessing them toward individuation, which, whatever, I don't know if that's the goal per se, but just embodying a true you as opposed to being utilized for a political agenda, et cetera, just becoming kind of like a vessel for someone else's agenda and not even being conscious of that because, again, they're tapping into all of this prima materia inside of you. So what is that dance like for you, people you work with during these times, What's your take on that?
I think I agree, right? Like the outer world is getting more noisy, more disjointed, more, the sort of global predator of dysfunction is pretty at a spectacular pitch. And there's so many causes and there's so many things to be upset about and to grieve about anywhere you look, right? And so I think what I find interesting about that is the way that like not being able to lean on, kind of like we were saying earlier, like to lean on and be pacified by like the outer world to feel good, to feel safe, to feel oriented. It feels like it's a time where we are being initiated into the superpower, like into our imagination and wielding our imagination, and to be like, if you don't like what you see, what the fuck else do you want to see then? And start like acting accordingly and like channel your creative genius into the world instead of just drinking it in and reflecting out that it sucks and it's shit. And, and like, so I feel like I feel more clear. I feel more oriented actually in this moment, especially around like, what is it called when you post, virtue signaling, right? It's sort of like
virtue signaling.
Virtue signaling. Yeah. It's sort of like, I don't feel that I used to feel more like, I should be posting this thing and it's not that I shouldn't use my platform in whatever way. Right. But I feel like I've gotten more, and I'm not saying this is correct because it might but as an example, like I can't comprehend what's happening in the Middle East as an example. Yeah. There are certain things happening politically and globally that I literally feel like my brain can't comprehend. And I feel like I can't comprehend it because that's not my battle I can't make myself know it. And I have to trust that I'm just like, what the fuck? And there's other things I do understand. And that's where I can put my skin and my fight in the game. But I think we're all supposed to be showing up and responding to certain things, but we can't, there's too much for everybody to be absorbing all of it. So I just feel like I've just been sort of enthralled with this idea of like, what is correct for me to respond to? And it's not just what you think I should be doing. I've, friends that are like, why aren't you speaking? And I'm like, I literally can't. And I have to trust that I'm doing my work and putting my shoulder to other work. And that's correct for me. And that might make you uncomfortable. And I'm okay with that. And I'm not saying that's correct or like ultimately maybe I'll regret it, but like, I'm willing to take the responsibility for that. But I don't think we can make I can't tell you what your fight is just because I care about that fight.
It makes me think about animism, which is an idea that I'm pretty fascinated by. In my understanding, it's times in the world or cosmologies or perspectives where everything is alive to some extent or to the full extent, actually. So rocks, trees, animals, everything has a different consciousness and should be respected in this different way. So yeah, the rock's opinion, and maybe we all are if we're tapping into our truth, flow, inspiration, signals that are distinctly for us. We are contributing to the situation in impactful, powerful ways. And I also think of kind of I don't know how to explain it other than maybe this blind or their eyes are closed and they're whirling dervishes like Rumi, the Sufis. He was described and those types of cats, but Rumi specifically as sometimes he would go into such a trance and would literally be whirling physically and spouting this poetry, freestyling out of the blue, and people would write it. So coming into this kind of eye of the storm place that's in this world and not of this world, as opposed to putting the human-centric consciousness on this pedestal and then creating this thought police situation where everyone's like, no, and it's, the mountain might take 1,000,000 years to respond, but it's singing a song, and it actually might have the longevity of that different time scale might have a more profound thing to say than someone on Instagram when they're on the toilet at 5 a.m. hungover. So I love that idea that we've spoken about and you speak about. If you don't know who you are, someone's going to tell you and you're going to believe them. That's kind of the summary of it. So I think of that in what we're describing. I think of James Hillman, saying something about know thyself. Well, I said know thyself, but he says growth is always loss. And that's a really kind of paradoxical, beautiful way of thinking of it to me. As in, we're talking about growing. A lot of us speak, I want to grow, doing this healing work to grow. But maybe it's actually the shedding. It's a reverse. You already are who you are when you come in. And slowly we accumulate through experience, which is intentional, but we accumulate all of this kind of copycat, behavior, personality types, and the work is actually losing. To lose that stuff that we've gathered that isn't ours, to go back down to the core. And I've said this metaphor 1,000,000 times. Michelangelo, when asked about the David statue, he said that David was already in the marble, and all he had to do was remove everything that wasn't David. So thinking about that, and then Carl Jung saying the most terrifying thing is to know yourself. So getting to the core of that. And then a friend of mine, Morgan, said, and the most beautiful, which of course it's both, right? The terror and the beauty of that.
I love all that.
So in the topic of that, that's all just kind of warm up thoughts that I had as I was thinking about Let There Be Crickets. So perhaps back to your Hermitage season, mine as well. Those both seem like unconscious, deep knowing soul decisions to bring us back to ourselves during these times. They seem very healthy reactions, or maybe not reactions because that implies something, but more of just like a response that's calculated to center, come back to the deeper truth of who we are, marinate in that, and then fully kind of congeal or reform to then emerge again. So that to me seems like one of the ways to answer my own question of how to, snip the Pinocchio strings in this day and age, so you're not just suddenly blabbering out and, So first, then that would imply silence, right? You need to embrace the silence. If we're saying let there be crickets, that means you're willing to not get invited here. You're willing to not have someone resonate. You're willing to kind of be left behind. Accepting never being gotten, accepting that you may never make it. All these dreams, all these carrots that you've been dangling in front of yourself, that shit might not work, man. So what are you going to do now? You know what I mean? And beneath that can come, for me at least, has come this joyful project, which I referenced before, the Little Mother universe. I'm having so much fun. I'm buying old yellow Sony cassette players and African masks from Kenya and mannequins and devil ducks, and just I'm like on this weird scavenger hunt from my psyche, and that it came from stopping everything, and and I started to hear these things. So then perhaps the thing that you think you've been chasing, although very different in appearance than what you presumed it was going to be, we think we're going to be signed, we think we're going to be whatever we think in our particular ambitions. But then that can actually, the essence of that can catch up to you. The real thing you've been chasing in its true form, because you've been chasing it, and in doing that, you've been leaving it behind or never letting it arrive to you. So then you sit together in the cave, perhaps you lay there, you float outside of time. You remember the punchline to this fucking life. You say, fuck, I get it. The joke of life and death and everything. In that timeless place, you return to yourself, you orient, signs begin to appear, whispers, the path was always there, but now you can sense it. And of course, we get lost again and again, but it seems to get easier and easier until you disappear into the act, which is the swish, the MJ fade away, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander swish in the heat of the moment. So anything you want to say about that kind of process? Because that's what I've been experiencing. And I think it's really in the Sitting Bull's idea of truth. You don't need many words to say it. To me, that's kind of, at least for now, all that matters. I mean, all that matters in the root essence of my entire life, because then from there, I can be a better father. I can be a better husband. I can be a better friend, better partner, better chef, better whatever I'm doing, if I'm coming from that space.
I love everything you just said. Yeah, I think it made me think, the idea of coming from that space made me think of what's felt really important in this season is like, what energy am I taking action from? Like, what are my beliefs and how is my behavior kind of, I'm taking action based on what I believe. And it's been this like season of looking at a lot of limitation and a lot of like stored density and stored scarcity and, just kind of having a more subtle. I've been through some bigger thresholds that were more spectacular in nature. This has been more sort of like an audit. But I really felt like sort of enthralled with that and with like the nature of reality and kind of being like receiving the tutelage of life and being like, I want this, like, please just dump like $15 million on my head. Like, that's my answer. That's what I need. And then being like, and then seeing the ways in which that wasn't given or in the way that I thought would be the solution. And just being so enthralled with sort of like how life collaborates with me, with us, with me, and like, and how gentle and sort of like pristine the teachings are. Cause everything, there was like just trusting how impeccable the genius was in every moment. Nothing's arbitrary. And being like, every time I felt like there was a financial contraction and I could feel myself feeling like the ground was moving under my feet, I was like, I would have to meet these cracks in my own foundation and my own cosmology around what makes you safe. What do you believe in? Money, it's like, but like, so it just felt like a very quiet and sort of intimate conversation with life, with God around like what's actually true. So I just feel like, I just felt really grateful that I was able to pull over. And I also in real time being like, I understand why people don't want to do that. Like, this is not easy. Like you said, the terror of meeting the self and why it has to be that way. I don't know, to be like terror. Okay, let's do it. But then kind of landing and seeing that there is integrity and everything is really grounded in love, and everything that isn't love is what you're meeting. Everything that is distortion, it's been a masterclass in distortion. Is this thought, is it a fear thought or like a faith thought? Like, what do you actually believe in moment to moment like a showdown with cosmology. So that just felt like, again, appropriate in terms of like my commitment to truth and wanting to live as truthful a life as possible and in integrity. And just being like, show me the money, show me the money, show me like what's up.
Yeah.
And it was hard because I think we touched on this where it's like people seeing my process, even close friends and close good people. I have a very select few people that are on the inner because I've done a lot of clearing and reorganizing around that. And even those people are like, are you okay? Like not being not legible, kind of like you were saying, and being like, you don't fucking have to see me, out of my way. Like, I'm just going to keep going. Like, and the way that actually did help me and also in being like, I don't need you to know me. I need to know me.
Exactly.
And who am I? So, yeah.
To be great is to be misunderstood. That's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote. That's always a mantra of mine. I think it's almost the $15 million. I have many equivalents of that kind of crystallization of a goal or something that I put on these amorphous kind of prima materia energies of excitement and passion and, ideation, projects I want to do. Oh, it would require this. It's almost like we're watching old Kung Fu movies with the wrong subtitles. So the $15 million is a misinterpretation because what I've found is the limitation truly does create an infinite blank check of empowerment. When you don't have what you thought you needed, you get more wiggly and see what's essential, and you can actually be more creative. to some extent. And maybe that's just like a huckleberry, making someone feel better about having to do hard labor and just sugarcoating it with a glorifying the lack mentality. But I like that a lot. Kind
I
of
think it's
flipping
true.
the script. It is true. It is true. Okay. So let there be crickets. According to my lazy Google fingers, I did a quick search on cricket symbology. You may know this, but in different cultures, they represent different things. In some cultures, they're even considered bad luck. But in most cultures, they seem to symbolize focus, self-expression, intuition, and sensitivity. They're signs of good luck, good fortune, wealth, and abundance, and communication. So I thought that's a funny kind of paradox and irony for this episode, taking the expression let there be crickets, or doing something, reaching out, like my son at school, or I see that so vulnerably now when my son is 6 at different gatherings. It's like a child walks up to another, will you be my friend? Or just that tenderness. And there could be crickets, right? There could be like, man, this kid's, whatever it may be. And that innocence and that reaching out and the heartbreak of maybe not being reciprocated. So that's what the title was about with crickets. But then in the symbology, it actually means the opposite. It means communication abundance. So it's almost, for me, by embracing the concept, by embracing the reality that it may be crickets in a negative sense, or what's perceived as negative, your truth may fall on deaf ears. Embracing that, you're actually tapping into powerful, real communication, which is exactly what you just said about, I don't need you to know me, I need to know me. So just another way of reiterating what you said, but I really like that kind of paradox.
I love it. But even when it's silent, you're actually accompanied by the things that you thought you need. Whatever. It's like
for
there's
real
only
though.
abundance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really true. And let's see, hearing yourself in that vein. So I remember I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was describing how, for him, a lot of his social world has fallen apart, and so there was a gathering that he was supposed to be invited to. Family members were there. It's like, and he wasn't, and they had said he would, and he wasn't. And I was standing talking to him, and I thought about crickets, and he said, it's just crickets. And then you talked about crickets. And I was just thinking about, I've been thinking about crickets a lot, and then I thought of this line from the new album where I say, in an age of silly silicone games, little mother stands out like some varicose veins. And that willingness to, it's like, how do you block out the roar of random noise to truly hear yourself? I don't know if that even connects the varicose veins and the silicone games, but it does a little bit, because the silicone games is trying to play that social, fitting in game, whereas you pull your pants up and you let the varicose veins show, metaphorically. Yeah. What's that? We talked about it vaguely, but what's that been like for you? Maybe in a more specific way, the actually embracing of you and letting things fall away, that shedding, social shedding, coming home to you, like you said in the beginning, feeling like you got walking in that space, feeling that joy.
Yeah. I just think it's been my path since the gate, just because I was like in a family, in childhood, in a family system where I wasn't supported. So it was like, I just feel like it was me and me, like from the beginning. So, but at the same time, there was also a way in which I was able to find like safety and sanctuary in myself, and always felt at home in myself. And so I think that's just sort of like my life's work, and then when I hit, like, as we talked about previously, like, the birthing of my trauma body 10 years ago, like, and being like, and my family system kind of falling apart like a house of cards, and being like, this is all the same theme. It's not new. but all of it just helps me go within where I'm like, oh, I'm my loving parent. I'm my soulmate. it's all me. And I think that has been good. Like just in terms of like understanding the periphery of my channel and being like, oh, I'm safe. I cleared out my aura. Everybody's got kicked out of the aura, like that they were living, like just understanding who I am, just even as an energetic channel, and the protection that comes with that. And that's why when people are like angry and upset, I can see and understand why people are upset about the things that they are, why people are in also just like emotional addiction to rage, to anger, to grief, to despair, and that, and just sort of observing all of that. I think it's hard. Like, I think if you don't know who you are, if we don't know, then we're going to hear a thought and it's going to trigger us and we're going to be pulled out of our center. So I just think I guess it's probably just a spiritual imperative to come back to the self and to really know what that is to the degree to which we can know it, know ourselves, and I think that's why I feel less and less available for noise, so to speak. Like if someone's like talking, I'm like, I'm not listening. I can tell I'm like, I'm not supposed to be, I'm very dialed into the teachers and the people I want to be listening to because I understand myself, or like a teacher that I'm like, I'm just going to like consume this particular woman I'm working with. I'm like, I'm just going to live and breathe your body of work for the next couple of years. Like, and that sort of like surrendering, but from this place of like, my higher self knows I need this. It's not because you're on a pedestal or I'm not good enough. Like just to be able to make those moves from power feels really freeing and liberating. Cause it's just like, I just trust myself so deeply, even if it's like the mistakes I make, or missteps. I'm like, I know my higher self is like, go do that thing. It's going to go sideways. Okay. I'm like, I'm so used to like shit going sideways seems to be that's my tombstone. Shit went sideways.
Yeah.
Whatever. So it's just like, I just trust all of that so deeply. And I think, that feels like a life accomplishment. I got what I actually needed.
100%.
I got this instead of the 15 mil, which, it was never about the money.
You still might get that.
Yeah.
You still might get that.
Yeah.
So I just interviewed the chair of a Pacifica program, Pacifica Graduate Institute. Her name is Mary Antonia Wood. So I interviewed her and read her book, The Archetypal Artist, and I have some parts that didn't make it into the episode with Mary that I felt called to bring into this conversation. What you're talking about now reminds me of a lot of the ideas in her book, where we are actually vessels of the soul. The soul is the one who is here to experience, explore. It's not about what we want. And I've heard that a lot, like the idea, I don't exist, you don't exist. The you think you are does not exist. Of course it does to some extent, or the illusion of it at least does, which makes it exist in some way. But I love positioning the lead character as a soul that's living through you. So therefore, what you think you want, safety, health, happiness, blah, 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 may not be the agenda of the soul. So that kind of just shakes up the whole foundation of evaluating success in general. And then hopefully you can, say, soul, let's go. I want to do that. I know I'm not getting out of this alive. I know I'm not getting out of this unscathed. I'm going to relinquish as much as possible these ideas that it's going to all work out in this fairy tale way, or at least in a candy-coated bullshit fairy tale way. And I want to get in the real fairy tale where it's going to be messy, it's going to be painful, confusing, heartbreaking, and it's going to be exactly what we came here to do. And we're going to, make that incredible. So one of the thoughts is what I call risky business. This is a theme that I identified in her book. Carl Jung aimed not so much at consistency, but toward a liberation of psyche. Through his multivocal and sometimes inconsistent writing, he revealed himself to be as much trickster as sage. Rowland surmised that Jung did not write to inform, but to transform. Like so many creators, Jung oftentimes doubted whether his work would be understood or whether it truly mattered. Nevertheless, he obeyed his daemon, the daemon of creativity, the artist, apart as one who risks more frequent, sustained, and profound encounters with the transpersonal archetypal depths. The creative individual who, through conscious devotion and surrender, draws the formless energies up from the dark roots and transforms them into images, words, and experiences charged with their own autonomous power. I love that. And
Love
that's
it.
exactly like without even me knowing, because it has been a bit of a scramble the last few days with parenting and various things. So this was a bit of a slapdash combination preparation for this episode, but look how perfect that is. That describes exactly the prima materia, those depths of archetypal energies that he's bringing forth, letting there be crickets, doubting yourself the whole time, or not the whole time, but definitely in and out of the flow. You're like, does this matter? Is this, I'm contradicting myself. There's multiple personalities coming out. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to speak to, but I just love, and that's a collection of quotes from Mary's book, The Archetypal Artist, which I'll put in this show notes as well. But yeah, I have a few more of those I wanted to bring in because they're just such crystallized essence, fossils of what we're talking about to some extent. So I don't know if there's anything there you want to speak to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love because you've touched on it a few times, like just transformation and the alchemy of that. And I find that just so inspiring because I think especially in this age of like being a coach online and social media, and it's like, get your 100K, like there's so much, it's such a kind of absurd thing where it's like, you can never be good enough. And like, my partner's always like, oh my God. Cause it's like, he's like, can you just be? And like, no, we got the next level, like where is it authentic to want to actually like grow and like not accept the status quo? And where is it like, it'll never be good enough. I have to just keep, clawing my way out of just the here and now. And I think that's just interesting to kind of temper. But I do think this could be the Manny Gen or like Sag rising, just like, I do need there to be a sense of like limitlessness and possibility. And I'm really fascinated by where and how we get like anytime we feel contracted or like lower frequency expression, we're not really channeling our truth, because when we're connected to our depth, there is just like bliss and limitlessness and expansion and possibility. And like, so I'm fascinated by the idea of like when we're willing to radicalize our imagination, it's like, oh, this situation is impossible. Oh, it is? Then I'm going to have to fucking rearrange it. It's going to have to come through a miracle. Like just that sort of like the will and our creative capacity to be like, I don't fucking accept this thing that seems to be like, I've decided it's this thing, but it was a mental limitation the whole time, or a spell or someone else's thing that I internalized as, and just to be like, fuck that shit. So I just feel really inspired by that around like the where and how we grow and expand in ways that are actually authentic. So we're really honoring that authenticity within ourselves, not because we're not good enough and we have to keep going, and just to be like, there are no fucking limits. If it looks impossible, it's going to fucking have to come through a miracle then.
And I think it's like a balance of that. I 100% agree. And to nuance that, I think there are limits to your destiny, which is the amor fati, like loving your fate. Listening to a recent Michael Mead episode, he talks about lot, as in your lot in life, and Fortuna, I believe is her name, the goddess who is partially responsible for doling out fates to those before they kind of descended into this realm. And apparently the word lot actually means wood chip, and wood chip is kind of like the wood chip from the tree of life, or the, what is it? The mundi, whatever, something mundi, axis mundi, the tree of it all. And people talk about tableau rasa, which is the idea of the soul being a blank slate when you come in. A lot of people might say, you know what? That's BS about, having past lives or souls. You're a blank slate and here you go, you see what happens. As opposed to the other side, which I've always leaned toward, which is no, I've been here before. There's, a pre-written code. There's a destiny. There's definitely stuff I'm coming in with that's very specific. And in this episode, he talks about the wood chip is both at the same time. So one side has a word written from Fortuna, which is your fate or your special word, and the other is blank because you're going to experience. But the idea of anything's possible to me is dangerous in the Western concept, because there are limitations in a destined way, good limitations. Not everyone's going to be in the NBA. That being said, there are people who are like 5'6" or 5'3" who should never have been in the NBA, but they followed that drive and it was particular to their passion. So it's just that nuance, I think. I think everything you said, but first it goes back to the hermetic, or that like kind of stripping down to really what is yours, and then anything's possible. But if you're operating with passions and goals that aren't truly yours, and they're coming from that cerebral, like googly-eyed, oh, I like the way that shiny life appears, it might not be for you. Therefore, there are limitations. So I just think that dance,
I love that.
that's just, And in that vein, another collection of quotes from the book, I titled this part, Down Boy, Sit, Good Boy, Ego Barking at the Ghosts Again. Sacrificing the ego's heroic notions of control is essential to art making. Sometimes the sacrifice is made consciously and with intention, but more frequently, the sacrifice comes as part of a struggle with loss, melancholy, failure, illness, and all other manner of afflictions. An archetypal orientation to soul recognizes this process as natural and necessary, since the soul pathologizes as it seeks experiences of every kind. By pathologizing, Hillman meant the psyche's autonomous ability to create a sense of suffering in any aspect of its behavior and to experience and imagine life through this deformed and afflicted perspective. I love that idea that the soul and the wound are kind of the eyes of the soul. The wound are the eyes of the soul. The wounds. Kevin, doodle an image of what you consider to be a soul and then make the eyes wounds. Okay, Kevin? I like that, because then it kind of takes our particular little worries, fears, pathologies, neuroses, and it almost puts them in this light of like, oh yeah, that's supposed to be happening like that because my soul is trying to create this weird prism that's going to then shine this perspective, which will add to the mixture. And then maybe in realizing that I can step out of the experience so intensely and watch it a little bit more, and it's kind of funnier, etc. Any thoughts?
I love that. Yeah. No, it just made me think of how like in my own experience, feeling more anchored in self, and I guess perhaps like witness consciousness is another way to say it. It's sort of like seeing like the human in me doing the thing, making the mistakes or not, or like succeeding or failing or fumbling, and just being like, there's just like this observation around like just sort of like loving all the parts, and like that's cute that you want that, like, all right, sweetie, you want like just to be like, it's like none of it feels like fully me, except that I love my personality and I love like sort of that flavor, and kind of especially because I shut it down first half of life, now it's sort of like my personality on steroids for second half, it seems, or just owning that more, that I have a big personality, but like and like loving the sort of ego and the dance of that flavor of self, and not wanting to like limit it, but it's a playful thing, not a serious thing, so just sort of feeling like trusting that like there's going to be a lot of things and ideas that these parts have around whatever desires, ambitions, like preferences, whatever, and just to be like, but however it all shakes out is the way it was all going to shake out, or the way it's going to shake out, and all that that's all perfect. I think for me, part of my like what's catalyzed the last couple of years of wanting to get really like impeccable around what is actually true and what's actually distortion is just being like, I surrender to life and the co-creation, but like I can't be the one that's getting in my own way. I just want to know that I have 100% control over the inner. And then however it unfolds, maybe just lived in my imagination, this idea. But that brought me so much joy, and that was enough. And that was great. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not actually attached to the outcome so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so just wanting to be, to know that I wasn't the one that was like standing in the way and blocking me. But like, who knows what happens tomorrow, you know? And be like, all right. I just couldn't like bear anymore to be the one that is like in my way.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the whole purpose.
I think it's interesting, and to each his own, but I find a lot of the kind of texts, especially now that I hear people referencing seemingly idealizing, surrender mentality, or just these ways that you can relieve suffering. Mary's book really spoke to me about this divine dissatisfaction that a lot of artists share, and it's intentionally like that. You're supposed to never be satisfied. You're supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to be confusing. I love this idea of the muse being very moody and amorphous and not wanting to deliver answers to anything. In fact, just creating these kind of wandery symbols that hopefully make you fall more deeply in love with your own fate and destiny, but are not providing you with answer or cure per se. So for anyone listening, and really to myself, who hopefully is paying attention right now, I think that's the affirmation, is that it's supposed to be kind of messy. And the moment I try, like that might last for 10 days, 2 weeks, like, okay, I'm going to embody the new wisdom from this book I just read that sounds awesome and it's going to transform my life. But the truth is, when I relax into knowing it's going to be chaotic at moments, it's going to be all this different kind of flow, confusing glimmers, like some hound through the woods. I catch the scent, I lose the scent, I cut myself, I lick my wound, I meet a whatever. Aslan comes and saves me from Narnia. We're reading Narnia right now. That awareness and embodiment of the messier process will actually allow me to relax into the flow, as opposed to clenching your, as Molly and I always say, living with your anus clenched, or watching a lot of basketball recently, the pressure of being in big spotlit NBA games, especially in the playoffs, et cetera. You have to kind of get lost in the flow, which requires an ability to know you're going to have off nights, know you're not always going to win, and still kind of have this goldfish memory of just what's next. So yeah, I like pointing that out. And as we stay in the vein of Sitting Bull, I know we still have some time here, but we don't need to go on, but I have a few more of these kind of categorized themes inspired by Mary's book that I wanted to bring in, if that's cool with you.
I'd love to hear, yeah.
So this one I call Suppression of Witch Consciousness. Tarnas argued that the evolution of the Western mind has been founded on the repression of those aspects of life that have been identified with the feminine. This repression includes a progressive denial of an undifferentiated unitary consciousness, of the participation mystique with nature, of the anima mundi, of the soul of the world, of the community of being, of the all-pervading, of mystery and ambiguity, of imagination, emotion, instinct, body, nature, woman, all of that which the masculine has projectively identified as other. That's some heavy shit, man.
Oof. Yeah. I don't know. That's so intense. I mean, it's like the, again, like the global predator of just, maybe there's more than one strain, but just dysfunction. And I don't know. There's so many forces swirling.
The archetypal sky father who kind of fucked everything up, came through and tried to like, let there be light, and this is what it is, and I'm going to name all the animals, and she came from my rib. And that's why I brought him when I saw him at a little candy shop. This is my best friend. His name's Quack. You guys can't see him, but you can imagine him. Little devil duck.
Devil ducky.
The innocence of darkness. That's what he represents to me, the trickstery. We can let that one just reverberate. I'm going to read a little more and we'll just see what else comes through. So this one I call Fear of Beauty. In its splendor, the aesthetic encounter with an artwork as a soul can guide us back to the via aesthetica, the path of beauty. As with Rilke, these encounters may startle and unsettle us into changing our lives, as there is nothing that does not see us. No wonder we put up defenses against beauty, against the soul. Poet Claire Lejeune clarified this strange phenomenon. The ultimate object of human fear is beauty. Nothing is more disarming, more ravishing than its eruption in our lives. That ties into the suppression too. It's like I can't control these beautiful phenomenons of just, so I need to that's enough. This is the rules. This is how it happened. This is what it's going to be. Now you go on Sunday and you pray, motherfucker, because that is not okay. Jezebel. I'm reading Tom Robbins' Skinny Legs and all. And now Juju's barking right on time because it's getting a little hectic in here. The ayahuasca trip is peaking. The dogs are barking. We're losing our minds. The religious people are starting to swarm. Be careful.
I love beauty so much. I mean, beauty is such a point of orientation for me. Just like beauty, it's like all about beauty, and wanting to venerate that and center that. But it makes me think about how truth and beauty are correlated. About truth and about power, when you were saying, just the way that societies, different cultures have just whether it's through religion or other forms of suppression, just power. I'm fascinated by, and personal power, because it's the most, I always say that our life force is the underground market for our life force is astronomically high. There's nothing that has as much, there's no greater market for it in the world than our life force, right? So for us to actually understand who we are and to be able to stand in it and not be available for it to be stolen and leaked, and dynamics and situations and causes that are actually coming from a place of whatever, not truth. I just think there's so much swirling around that I think is really powerful. It just reinforces the imperative to go within and know thyself. Because part of what I love about, to me, this, I don't know, maybe it's naive or something, but it feels it does feel true that when it comes to predatory forces or evil force or whatever it is, it only, because love is the only reality and truth is the only reality, those forces only have power to the degree to which we enmesh with them and mistake their thinking for our own. Without that, and when we know who the fuck we are and we're not available for that, there's nothing that is granting that force permission to take over our thinking, take over our actions, to create destruction, so it's sort of we have to consent consciously or unconsciously to be harvested of our energy. And that is a choice that we can make. And I think the more people that can recognize that's not me, those aren't my thoughts, and can anchor into something that's actually real, that the more we can anchor the collective, right? And kind of ground into reality, which is beauty, truth, love.
Makes me think of the word dignity. Beauty is not for sale. There might be some sort of barter system or some sort of reciprocal exchange communally, but beauty, you can't put a price tag on it. You might give a gift for a gift, gift commerce, etc. But yeah, I think of that and what you just said. Once you recognize that and continue to return to that, you are kind of free here. But what that entails is you have to know I'm going to die. So you can't allow the fear of death to let that become shackles and a yoke on your neck, right? You have to kind of go straight to the deep fears that motivate everything, as well as the deep beauty and love that motivates everything. You have to come to terms with them and then walk out, and then you can hopefully be a bit more autonomous than you were before.
Right. The finiteness, it brings more urgency, more piercing kind of articulation of all of that, to be like, oh, because it's not just, oh, Jake gets to be beautiful forever. It's like, no, this is time limited, like, to be oriented around our how that we're expiring, and will, it's like that supports us to actually receive the gift and the miracle that we're walking out.
And as Dimitri Martin, the comedian, always says, I love this joke. We all have, he doesn't say it like this, I'm flipping his joke to this moment, but if we all have an expiration date, just like milk, when we expire, we will eventually turn into cheese. So don't worry. When you die, you will become soul cheese.
Soul cheese, I love it.
So last few, and then we can dip. I know we have our days. This one I call The Loss of Myth Consciousness. Again, all of these quotes I'm reading are from Mary Antonia Wood's book, The Archetypal Artist. The loss of myth consciousness I believe to be the most devastating loss that humanity can suffer. For myth consciousness is a bond that unites men both with one another with the unplumbed mystery from which mankind is sprung and without reference to which the radical significance of things goes to pot. Now a world bereft of radical significance is not long tolerated. It leaves men radically unstable so that they will seize at any myth or pseudo-myth that is offered. Another way of, in some collegiate, smart person way of, and beautiful, poetic way of saying what we were saying in the beginning of that kind of prima materia that goes unexamined can be easily manipulated.
Yeah, I also think I've been thinking a lot about Francis Weller's work around like the sort of fractured tribe and the loss that we're all carrying around, like, and just like how disoriented, right? To be like in a place where we're vulnerable, we don't know who we are. So, is this my guru? Is it like, we're sort of like the disconnection from, I don't know, like community, tribe, and being kind of just knowing that we belong. He says, like, we used to come in expecting 40 pairs of eyes on us and know that we belong. And now we're just like these free radicals that, just the sort of like ancestral grief that we're carrying around loss of tribe. And I've been thinking about that because my daughter's going through this, right, as I mentioned, like rite of passage ceremony right now, where it's like going through a particular ceremony for over 3 weeks in the backcountry in Washington State around like you're saying goodbye to the child who's dying. Childhood is gone. Like, say goodbye to it. The child that's over. And can you welcome back the young woman that's coming, right? And I think Francis Weller talks about these like in intact cultures and indigenous culture, like there are these rites of initiation where you're confronting the predator, which he says is different than the inner child. It's like the spiritual showdown with our power. And if we were held, when we are held in that, we have the confrontation and there's a death that happens, and then we come into knowing who the fuck we are, and then we then are initiated, we're adults, and then we share that gift. We're connected to our purpose and why we're here and what medicine we're here to bring to the tribe. And so, but because we don't have that, and I was talking to my friend whose daughter is a good friend of mine, who's also doing this, and I was like, it would have been so easy to not do this. Just have another summer of just hanging out and whatever. And I'm like, thank God we did this, because like, this is the last year of this program. She can do it. And I'm like, it just feels like cultural repair to allow for that. And then to be like, like Francis Waller says, that we're a collective of adolescents because nobody had that, we're not having that confrontation. And so we're just like flailing babies. So it just, something about that was pinging for me around like what makes us vulnerable to not knowing who we are and kind of being lost and being like, are you my guru? And so I don't know. I feel like and he also says that we'll be confronted in different ways. Maybe you and I have spoken about this before around like death, illness, like there's different ways that we will be invited to be initiated, but I know for myself, having crossed my own sort of thresholds of initiation, I don't feel confused. Like, I'm just like, I can appreciate, I'm glad that for whatever reason I was graced with the opportunity to, and it feels like a privilege in this day and age to be like, I was able to kind of go through that. So now I'm not confused about like who I am or what I'm doing or what my purpose is, and it's like, but we're missing the sort of like thing that's built in around how to ensure that
Hmm.
happens, right? It's sort of like, it's a roll of the dice now.
Which is a new kind of initiation. Like if I zoom out, I love to think that everything, and it sounds like you too, that everything is happening exactly as it should. So we're in like the street baller freestyle version of the old ceremonial initiations, which requires more of like, throw it all to the wind and let's see if it comes. Yeah, if it's truly yours, it'll come back. Let's see what happens. Let's create the most chaotic, random situation and see if we can still remember who we are. Or the myths of like God being a lonely being who then creates another kind of being from himself or herself. I mean, it gets tricky with all that, but whatever it is. And then in this particular myth, the new being kind of scatters the original God into the world, into the animals, into the humans, all the forms, and then shouts down from the void, all right, now remember who you are. Like it's some sort of hide and go seek game. So yeah, that's
I
awesome
love
and
it.
inspiring that you're doing that though with your daughter. That's great. So last few thoughts. This one I call, oh, how easy it would be if repression worked. Culture, he argued, can begin to function as an empty shell and a protective safeguard against direct inner experiences with the awe-inspiring, but equally terrifying, numinism. Young utilized the term apotropaic for this type of protective device or situation, applying it not only to culture but to sterile forms of religion as well. It is the creative individual who is charged with scaling the walls of these protections to confront and renew the human relationship to the wilderness of the numinous, a task that is vital not only for the individual, but also for the collective in every epoch. This is how Jung, or epoch, I don't know. This is how Jung viewed the parallel aims of his psychology and of art. This is also the calling of those who embody the shamanic spirit. And I go on to say, we're obviously existing in a culture of control. American culture, as described by cultural historian Jackson Lears, is a culture of control built upon long-standing assumptions regarding the primacy of the individual human being and the efficacy of human agency over the vast collection of unseen forces that interact with our conscious intentions and which were once called fate. Today's creators, and for a world still suffering from the splitting off and elevation of humankind above nature, masculine above feminine, reason above the irrational, almost entirely eclipsed by an aggressive form of Skyfather creation myth with its emphasis on transcendence, disembodied rationalism, and discrimination. Rowland argues that Jung's entire project was driven by a possibly barely conscious awareness of the desperate need to revive Earth Mother embodied femi-consciousness because the dominance of Skyfather separation had made modernity sick. Heavy shit.
We are in some deep, as my mother would say, deep yogurt.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
But I think you mentioned this earlier, like the like how to trust this plot, like to be like, oh, okay, let's see. Now God is like, okay, let there be like just free ball, freestyle, like whatever. See,
Let's
see what
free
you can
ball
find.
it now.
No
more boxers, guys.
But but like how, and it's not to like use this to self numb and check out, but just this, to me, it feels just like a counter, like a point of orientation to be like, whoa, with what we're like kind of navigating and the vibe and the frequency of the collective, which is so intense, but also like simultaneously like the divine sort of impeccability again in all of it, and like how to trust it on some fundamental level ultimately, because there's never been a point in human history where we should be like, we're good to go, like it's always there's always it's tricky to be on this planet, I think, at any point. And I think just trusting it on some level, I feel like that's the antidote to despair essentially, and doom and dread, is to be like, we have to hold, like it has to be okay on some level, because it's what is here. That's not to say it's okay that there's genocide and starvation, like all these things happening. It's not to make that okay, but it's like we're more than a 3D reality.
Definitely.
So there has
the
to
invisible
be
world.
It has to be okay somehow because it's what's here.
Yeah.
And like respond, and then from that place of like, okay, I trust this is. I don't get a say, but I do have a response. Sweller talks about that. Like we each have a response to bring.
Yeah. A medicine to contribute. Perhaps. So
well, because I think that helps because it's
definitely.
like if we don't find that it's okay, like if we're only operating in despair, it's just a sort of like collapse, cut and run situation versus like how do we find a way to show up and to like not make our inner child totally depressed.
100%.
Yeah.
So I will finish this with this idea of do not lose hope, you matter. Mm-hmm. Some quotes from Mary's book. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. There is only a queer, divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that makes us more alive than the others.
I love it. That's beautiful.
So you matter. You use out there. We's for all my French listeners. And thank you for joining again. I can't wait to have you on again and again because
me too.
Yeah, the roux in the gumbo definitely thickens as, you know, the familiarity and the family and the flow. And I like this co-creation of a third entity that we create when we connect, you know, as we all do when we're going deeper and deeper. So that's great. And now, any closing words, any last thoughts before we ride out into the distance?
Yeah, I mean, I think just I appreciate, as always, connecting. And I think the now moment is really like really wide open, like big bang possibility in every single like millisecond. And if we don't just carbon copy what we just thought and received and bring it into this moment, I just feel really optimistic about potential and about our creative capacity to transform the world, you know, and like becoming the like frequency within ourselves that the world can entrain to. So that's
knock on wood. Don't want to jinx it. I'm right there with you because yeah, exactly. Right now I've been feeling what you just said though. Like I can feel this rising up of magic coming out of the ashes like more than ever, but knock on wood because, you know, even in the lyrics you'll hear in the song that's about to play, I say that. I said, damn it, now I jinxed it because it's like the moment I name that everything is flowing well, you know, but I'm with you on that. And without further ado, I'm going to play this song called Angel's Advocate for Jainism. This is a prime example of someone following their rabbit hole weirdness and discovering things. I heard this beat sent from my brother Prospect Lux, and I thought of sampling records. I don't know, you're from New York, so I don't know if you know the tradition in hip hop of digging through the crates, finding old vinyls, and then sampling, you know, sections of songs from the past and making beats out of them. That's kind of how I started. And so suddenly I imagined a spider is living in one of these vinyl crates, and I don't want to wake her up because she's laying her eggs and she's cuddling with her little spider family. And so that's why I stopped sampling, because I didn't want to disturb the spider. And Jainism is, I had to Google it, but you know Jainism. So anyway, just people who don't, it's like extreme veganism, like maybe don't even walk where ants are, etc. So Angel's Advocate for Jainism. Without further ado, you can find this on Bandcamp. and really excited for this universe. Thank you again, Astrid.
My pleasure.
Much love to everyone, and I will see you guys very soon. Peace.
It's little mother. It's little mother. It's little mother.
Shout out to the spider in the crates that we dug in. Don't wake her up, she's laying eggs and cuddling. That's why I stopped sampling Jainism, holding a candle in the rain, wick fizzling. Which planet is this? Anti-gravity, I drift, wax dripping up, and my dream is Sandman insists. Hammock over abyss, a blissful existence. Damn it, nah, I jinxed it. Angel's advocate, ambidextrous wrist, pen pals, a schizophrenic pencil enemies, bent out of shape, please erase it. Limping through the footnotes, marginalized. Looking for a good hook, harmonize. Not a word, but you know what I mean by go blank yourself. Good advice in the meantime. Took a right and I beeline to write honeycomb lines out in the dream time. Hive-minded, my queen reminds me to be myself, star tattooed knee rhymes. Russian mobsters who won't bow and bees knees lyrics from the spirits of Old Owl. Oh, wow.
Purge enemies, cleaning out my closet. First Simba coat, getting rid of all this. Fresh pair of Nikes, stepping in some dog shit. No God, praying that the tribe realign with the pale fox. The tribe revealed astronauts. Serious as me, I can see what you cannot. Naked I came unashamed, dancing outside in the rain. Molding the pottery, pouring out poetry, going with the flow. Word wizardry, every spell I quote. Devoted to the most pinnacle, identical, quite cynical, might be to you. Jump the broom, I assume it'll last, but unlike Keith, I ain't sweating your ass. Blast from the past, back to the future. All black DeLorean came with a booster. Do this for the children. Girl, I'm recording. That's what I mean right there.
It's just crickets. And then you talked about crickets. And I was just thinking about, I've been thinking about crickets a lot, you know?